Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. If you like the things that I talk about in these weekly podcasts, you can find out more by visiting me online at michaelneill.org, and you can also sign up for our free basic course, which you'll find the link on the homepage. Now, one of my favorite things about what I do is that essentially I make my living by exploring the nature of the human experience. And I generally get to do it with pretty cool people who also like to explore the nature of the human experience. And the point of it is that we get to be really happy and love our lives, which is kind of fun and nice and rewarding. And one of the things that I'm always looking for, and have been really for the 30 plus years that I've been exploring, is what are the keys to change? Like, what are the things that consistently lead to change? And one of the things that I've seen more and more about lately is an area of conversation that can be kind of oddly contentious when you get into spiritual or psychological circles. And it's the idea of levels of consciousness, or as the Scottish mystic Sid Banks used to talk about them, levels of conscious state. And for people who are sort of non-dual purist spiritual people, they hate the idea of levels of consciousness because there are no levels, because consciousness is the nature of the entire cosmos, and to talk about it in levels artificially diminishes it and creates division. And I do have a counter argument, and my counter argument is it's a freaking metaphor. I don't mean it literally, but the purpose of the metaphor, at least the way I use it, is it highlights an observable phenomenon. And that observable phenomenon is that pretty much all of us thrive in one or more areas of our lives and struggle in others. So I've worked with academic geniuses who couldn't navigate the basics of university politics. I've worked with business geniuses who can't have a meaningful conversation with their own kids. I've worked with some like superstar performers, and tens of thousands of people will scream their name, and then they get on their own and they can't make it 3 hours before they have to take drugs. I've worked with just filmmakers who can't figure out reality, and that might sound remote and grand, but if you think about your own life, I can pretty much promise you there's areas of your life where you're consistently able to show up, enjoy yourself, do really well, and other areas of your life where you struggle pretty much every time. So you might have a great relationship with your kids, but a terrible one with your partner, or a great one with your partner, but a terrible one with your kids or your parents. You're great with your company's money, but you can't make your own work, or you're great with your own stuff, but you can't figure it out beyond your own individual finances. You might be spiritually fulfilled and can't make a living, or you might be great at making a living and you feel empty inside. And none of that is even remotely unusual, but that doesn't mean it's natural or necessary. And so for me, the metaphor, the idea that I'm going to talk about is levels of consciousness. It makes sense of that kind of almost schizophrenic variance in our capacity to thrive. So what I've done here is I wrote out a little dialogue based on a number of client sessions, sort of amalgamated. And the sessions always kind of follow a theme. So this would be a typical session. So I'm me, and the client will be the amalgamation. So I would say to the client, what would you love to explore today? Money. Again, it seems like no matter what I do to bring more money in, some new bill or expense shows up to keep me stuck trying to keep my head above water. Well, do you have a theory about why that is? I know why it is. I'm just no good with money. I'm too eager to please people, so I can't say no, and that means there are so many demands on my time that I just can't focus in on one thing long enough to make a real go of it. My biggest fear is that I'm getting closer to retirement age, and I'm not getting any closer to being able to retire. And it's probably going to go on forever. Yikes. Can I offer an alternative theory? Please. Levels of consciousness. What are they? Well, they're a way of talking about how much of your innate wisdom and well-being you're able to bring to any particular area of your life at any given time. Think of it like a glass elevator. When you go up, you get perspective, and the higher you go, the clearer things get and the more enjoyable the view. Like, I know you're a brilliant cook. In fact, I've actually never met someone who seems so comfortable just creating dishes from scratch without having to consult recipe books or go out shopping for special ingredients. Well, I mean, that's very kind, but it's a bit late in the game for me to go back and retrain as a chef. Plus, I don't think I'd enjoy that lifestyle. Bear with me. I'm not bringing your ability to cook up as a solution to your apparent money problems. I'm just highlighting that you know what it's like to show up to life in a higher level of consciousness. Tell me a bit about what it's like when you're cooking up a meal. Well, it's easy. I just look in the fridge or cupboard to see what's there, and I let my mind wander until some interesting combination of ingredients comes to mind. And how do you feel when you're doing it? Well, really nice. I mean, it tickles me to play with possibilities. And I know that, even if what I make turns out to be terrible, I can just throw it out and try something new tomorrow. Plus, when someone really likes what I've made, it lights me up to know I was able to make them feel good. Okay, so to me, that suggests that your level of conscious state around cooking is really high. You're relaxed, open, confident, you take things as they come, and you do the best you can with what's available. It doesn't occur to you to worry about how things are going to turn out or put pressure on yourself. You engage with the challenge creatively and have the mental bandwidth to notice how what you make impacts the people around you. Now, let's contrast it. How do you feel when you're engaging with your finances? Miserable. Hopeless. Like, I don't want to engage at all, but I mean, it's different. If I make a mistake in the kitchen, it doesn't really affect anyone. But when I make a mistake around money, my whole family suffers. So can you feel how your whole system shut down at the mere mention of money, as opposed to how open and expansive you were when you talked about cooking? Well, yeah, but isn't that because I'm good at cooking and terrible with money? Well, I'm suggesting pretty much the exact opposite. The reason you're good at cooking is because you show up to it in a high level of consciousness. And the reason you struggle with money is you show up in the basement. Well, so how do I fix it? How do I get my elevator of consciousness to go up? Well, that's where I've got some very good news for you. The elevator of consciousness is made to go up and down. So whatever level we're at in real time determines which thoughts come into our mind, how hopeful or discouraged we feel, and how light or dark the world around us appears to be. The higher we go, the lighter things feel. The lower we go, the heavier. Now here's the key. The only thing that keeps the elevator stuck at a level of consciousness is that we try to move it ourselves, usually by fixing the way that we think the world is at that level of consciousness. So we look out at a battle we know we can never win and try to come up with a plan to win it, or terrify ourselves with imaginary futures, and then try to come up with creative solutions to our freshly imagined future problems. But isn't that called being realistic? Only by other people stuck at the same level of consciousness. Have you ever heard the Einstein quote about not being able to solve problems with the same level of thinking that created them? The truth is, when we realize that struggle is about our level of consciousness and not our circumstances, we stop trying to fix the circumstances directly and allow the elevator to rise. Then, when we're at a higher level, we take a fresh look and see a completely different world. So I'm still not getting what you want me to do. Am I supposed to just wait for my problems to magically solve themselves? Well, you can do whatever you want. I'm just pointing out that if you see this as a level of consciousness problem and not a circumstances problem, you'll wake up one morning and feel completely different about it. From those new, nicer feelings, the problem will look different, and different things will occur to you about what to do about it. And now, be honest. Wouldn't you love it if you could put the you that cooks in charge of your money? Well, that would actually be amazing. Now, that was a real dialogue, but not quite, because I talked with a number of people of that, just pointing out that what looks like a real life problem turns out to be a state of mind problem, a level of consciousness problem. Now, by the time we get to where our client got to in that dialogue, the conversation's usually gotten kind of reflective. And there's usually a kind of a nice sense of quiet, more peaceful than when we began. And the reason for that is that the moment you truly consider the possibility that your problem is a level of consciousness, your level of consciousness has already begun to rise. So, if you want to apply this for yourself, and I encourage you to, here are a few questions and ideas you can play around with to kind of spark your own insights. So the first is, where in your life do you thrive, and where in your life do you struggle, and what do you notice that's different between the two areas? Second question, or group of questions. What if you could feel the way you feel when you're at your best in the areas of life where you're at your worst? And how might things go differently? And then the third, it's not really a question, but more like an experiment. The next time you feel yourself go down, or your world starts to get smaller and darker and heavier, see if you can see it as a level of consciousness problem instead of looking for an explanation in your circumstances or in your personal psychology. And I can pretty much promise you that each time you do, you'll notice yourself immediately start to lighten up. And when you lighten up, the world around you begins to look lighter and brighter and more expansive. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk to you soon.